You never really know who lives next door. On the surface, my neighbor Daniel Mason was everything a community could want. He waved at every passing car. He shoveled snow from the sidewalk without being asked. He showed up at block parties with a six-pack and a smile. Daniel was the first to volunteer if anyone needed a ladder, jumper cables, or a hand moving furniture. And me? I trusted him. My name is Andrew Reed. I'm 51 years old, and I've lived in the same house for more than 20 years. My wife passed a few years back, and since then, the neighborhood has become my family. Having someone like Daniel next door felt like a blessing. He reminded me of the old-fashioned kind of neighbor, the sort my father used to talk about. The guy who'd give you the shirt off his back. At least, that's what I thought. I can remember the first time I loaned him something, my power drill. He showed up at my door with that easy grin, said he needed to fix a loose step on his porch. I handed it over without hesitation. He brought it back the next day, polished, cleaner than when I gave it to him. That's the thing about con men. They know how to play the part. Soon it became a routine. A shovel in the winter, my lawnmower in the summer. A few bucks here and there for emergencies. He always paid me back quickly, always thanked me like I was doing him the biggest favor in the world. So when Daniel said he was struggling a bit, bad credit from a messy divorce, trouble opening a new account, I didn't think twice about helping. He asked if I'd mind if a package or two got delivered in my name, since he didn't trust his mailbox. Harmless, right? Just neighborly kindness. I told myself that's what community was about. But then, little things started happening. A letter came from a credit card company I'd never applied to. I figured it was junk mail. A month later, a bill showed up, $200 for purchases I didn't make. I called the company, told them it was a mistake, and they cleared it up. I shrugged it off. Until it happened again. This time, it wasn't just a credit card. It was a medical bill. Apparently, Andrew Reed had visited a clinic across town, run blood work, and walked out without paying. Only it wasn't me. I hadn't been to a doctor in months. I sat at my kitchen table, staring at the invoice with my name printed neatly across the top, my stomach turning cold. That night, I mentioned it to Daniel while we stood by the fence. He gave a sympathetic nod, frowned like he was genuinely upset on my behalf. That's terrible, Andy. These companies mix things up all the time. Happened to me once. You should just ignore it. I wanted to believe him. I really did. But there was something in his tone, a little too casual, a little too smooth. The next week, I caught him at my mailbox. He had his hand on the stack of envelopes before I even got there. He smiled, handed them over like nothing was wrong. Just keeping an eye out, he said. And maybe that's all it was. But my gut said otherwise. A month later, the phone rang while I was making coffee. A debt collector. The voice on the other end asked when I planned to start making payments on the car loan I'd taken out. Only I hadn't taken out a car loan. That was the moment everything snapped into focus. Daniel Mason, my perfect neighbor, wasn't just borrowing my tools or using my mailbox. He wasn't just smiling at block parties and waving at passing cars. He was stealing my name. Backhand index pointing right. Let me ask you. What would you do if you realized your friendly, helpful neighbor was slowly taking over your identity? Would you confront him immediately, or would you play along and wait for proof like I did? Share your answer in the comments. Fire, and don't forget, subscribe to Sweetest Revenge for more stories where betrayal hides in plain sight, until patience makes the truth explode. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat in the dark, staring out the window at Daniel's house. His porch light was on, casting shadows across the lawn. For the first time, I didn't see a neighbor. I saw a predator. And I promised myself, before this was over, the entire neighborhood would see him the same way. When that debt collector called about a car loan I never took, my first instinct was to slam the phone down and scream. But I didn't. I took a slow breath, scribbled every detail into a notebook, and thanked the caller for their time. Because in that moment, I knew this wasn't a mistake, it was a scheme. And the man pulling the strings was living 20 feet away from me. I stared across the street at Daniel's porch that night. The same porch I'd helped repair with my drill. The same porch where he'd once offered me a beer and said, "Neighbors look out for each other." My hands trembled with rage. But anger alone doesn't win wars. Patience does. So I made myself a rule. No confrontation, no explosions, no accusations. Not until I had proof. The next day, I requested copies of my credit reports from all 3 bureaus. When they arrived, I sat down at my kitchen table, heart pounding, and flipped through them. My stomach dropped. There were accounts I'd never opened. A department store card in my name with nearly $1,000 charged. A cell phone plan I didn't use. That car loan the collector had called about. There it was, tied to a vehicle I'd never even seen. Every line of that report felt like a knife to the gut. But then I noticed the addresses. Some of the accounts weren't tied to my home address. They were linked to a P.O. box across town. I drove there the next morning, parked across the street. And who did I see walking out with a bundle of mail in his hands? Daniel Mason. He tucked the envelopes under his arm, glanced around, and strolled off like it was the most natural thing in the world. That was the first real proof. And it lit a fire in me. I bought a small fireproof safe and installed it in the basement. Every scrap of evidence went inside: credit reports, debt notices, photocopies of bills. I started keeping a log. Dates, times, the weird looks Daniel gave me when I mentioned mail going missing. I also began watching the mailbox more closely. Sure enough, Daniel had a habit of being outside when the mailman came. Sometimes he'd grab the stack before I even stepped out, always with that neighborly smile. "Oh, I was just grabbing it for you." It made my skin crawl, but I smiled back. I thanked him. I let him think I was still the trusting fool next door. Then came the moment that nearly gave me away. I was out late one evening, coming back from a hardware store run, when I saw movement near my front porch. My headlights caught Daniel crouched by my mailbox, flashlight in hand. He froze, caught like a thief in a spotlight. But he didn't panic. He stood up slowly, waved casually, and said, "Evening, Andy. Saw your box was loose. Thought I'd tighten it for you." I forced a chuckle. "Thanks, Dan. Appreciate it." Inside, my blood boiled. He wasn't fixing anything. He was casing my life, one envelope at a time. That night, I called a lawyer friend of mine, Claire Reynolds. I laid out what I suspected: the fake accounts, the forged loans. Claire listened quietly, then said, "Andrew, you're dealing with identity theft. If you confront him now, he'll deny everything and cover his tracks. You need to let him hang himself with his own rope." So I doubled down. I placed a small security camera across from my mailbox, disguised as a birdhouse. I signed up for notifications on every one of my accounts. And I began pulling my credit report monthly instead of yearly. And sure enough, Daniel got bolder. Within weeks, another new account appeared. This one wasn't small. It was a line of credit for $5,000. Open under my name, with my social security number. That was the breaking point. I remember standing in my kitchen, staring at the notice, shaking so hard I could barely hold the paper. My throat felt tight, my heart hammering. I thought of my late wife, of the years I'd worked to keep our home paid off, our credit clean, our lives steady. And now this man, the man I'd trusted with my tools, my time, even my friendship, was destroying it piece by piece. I wanted to storm across the street. I wanted to grab him by the collar and demand he explain himself. But Claire's words echoed in my head. Let him hang himself. So I waited. I smiled at him across the fence the next day, asked if he needed to borrow the hedge trimmer. He smiled back, eyes twinkling, as if nothing in the world was wrong. And the whole time, I thought, "You're not borrowing anymore, Daniel. You're stealing. And when I'm ready, everyone will see you for what you are." Backhand index pointing right. What would you do if you caught your neighbor red-handed stealing your identity? Would you march over and confront him, or would you stay quiet and gather proof like I did? Share your answer in the comments. Fire, and don't forget, subscribe to Sweetest Revenge for more stories where betrayal wears a smile until patience rips the mask away. The very next week, the phone rang again. Another debt collector. Only this time, it wasn't about credit cards or small loans. It was about a luxury car lease, signed in my name. When that collector mentioned a luxury car lease in my name, I felt my chest tighten. I drive a 10-year-old Ford pickup. The idea of me behind the wheel of a brand new luxury sedan was laughable, if it hadn't been terrifying. I hung up the phone and sat in silence. The kitchen felt smaller, darker. Every clock tick sounded louder. My name wasn't mine anymore. Daniel had taken it, twisted it, and built himself a life out of my identity. That night, I pulled out the safe in the basement and spread everything across the workbench: credit reports, debt notices, photocopied bills, my handwritten notes. It was a mountain of betrayal. And still, I knew it wasn't enough. Claire, my lawyer friend, had been right. If I moved too soon, Daniel would wriggle away. I needed more. Ironclad proof. Something even he couldn't talk his way out of. So I hired a private investigator. Her name was Linda Perez, sharp-eyed and no-nonsense. She listened while I explained, flipping through the folder of evidence I'd built. When I finished, she tapped the papers with her pen and said, "This guy's not just playing games, Andrew. If he's using your name for cars and credit, odds are he's got other victims too. Let me dig." A week later, Linda called me, voice buzzing with energy. "You're not going to believe this. Your neighbor rented a storage unit across town under your name." My stomach dropped. A storage unit? Yep. And guess what's inside? 2 nights later, I found out. Linda met me near the unit, a camera hanging from her neck. We watched from her car as Daniel pulled up in that same beat-up SUV he always drove. He glanced around, unlocked the unit, and disappeared inside. 10 minutes later, he came out carrying a box overflowing with mail. Not just mine, dozens of names, dozens of addresses. Linda snapped photos, every angle, every license plate. "He's running a full identity theft ring," she whispered. "And you're the anchor account, the clean name he uses to open doors." I felt sick. It wasn't just me. He was stealing from the whole community. The same neighbors he waved at every morning. The same people who thought he was the perfect neighbor. Back at the office, Linda laid out the photos for me. Piles of stolen mail, credit card applications, fake IDs in various stages of completion. "He's been at this for years," she said. "And no one's caught him because he hides behind that smile of his. People trust him." I thought of all the times I'd seen him laughing at block parties, flipping burgers on the grill, chatting with Mrs. Langley from 2 doors down. Was she in that pile, too? Was her name on one of those fake IDs? The fury inside me burned hotter than ever. But so did the resolve. I wasn't just fighting for myself anymore. I was fighting for everyone Daniel had fooled. Over the next month, Linda and I built the case. We cataloged every fraudulent account. We tracked the bills piling up in my name. We followed Daniel's trips to the storage unit, each one documented with time-stamped photos. Meanwhile, I kept playing the part of the clueless neighbor. When Daniel waved from his porch, I waved back. When he asked if I wanted to borrow his hedge trimmer, I thanked him like nothing was wrong. And every time I smiled at him, I knew I was smiling at a man digging his own grave. The hardest moment came one Saturday afternoon. Daniel showed up at my door with a wide grin and said, "Hey Andy, I just came into a little cash. Thought I'd treat you to dinner." On me. On him. My stomach churned. Was he going to pay with a card in my name? Was he going to buy me dinner with my own money? But I smiled, shook my head politely, and said, "Rain check, Dan. Got some work to do." As he walked away, I thought, one day soon, you won't be offering me dinner. You'll be begging me for mercy. The more Linda uncovered, the clearer the plan became. We wouldn't just catch him, we'd catch him red-handed. Backhand index pointing right, let me ask you. If you discovered your neighbor wasn't just stealing from you, but from half the block, would you confront him and risk tipping him off? Or would you stay quiet and build the ultimate trap? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Fire, and don't forget, subscribe to Sweetest Revenge for more stories where betrayal hides behind a friendly smile until the mask rips off. One night, Linda showed me the final piece of the puzzle, photos from inside the storage unit. Mail addressed to me, Mrs. Langley, the Johnsons down the street, even the retired veteran 3 houses over. And in the center of it all, a binder labeled accounts. Page after page of stolen identities, usernames, passwords. It wasn't just fraud. It was an empire. And Daniel Mason had built it right next door. When Linda showed me that binder from Daniel's storage unit, something inside me shifted. Up until then, it had been about survival, protecting my name, saving my credit, shielding myself from the fallout of his theft. But staring at page after page of stolen identities, neighbors' names lined up like a hit list, I realized this wasn't just my fight. Daniel wasn't a petty thief. He was a predator hiding in plain sight. And predators don't stop until someone stops them. That's when Linda leaned forward across her desk, eyes sharp. "Andrew, we've got enough for the police to move. But if you want him exposed, really exposed, we need to catch him in the act. You up for that?" I didn't even hesitate. Yes, let's do it. The plan was simple on paper, but dangerous in practice. We'd bait him with something too tempting to resist. A fake financial document, complete with my signature, account numbers, and access details. All of it crafted by Linda and my lawyer friend Claire. All of it completely worthless, but convincing enough to look like gold. The idea was this. I'd leave it where Daniel could find it. The moment he tried to use it, It would trigger a flag we'd already coordinated with the bank and investigators. They'd be watching, ready to move. It felt like setting a mousetrap in my own home. 2 days later, I slid the bait into a folder labeled Estate Planning and placed it on my desk. I left the office door unlocked for the first time in months. And I waited. That evening, Daniel dropped by just to chat. He leaned against my fence, talking about the weather, about the potholes on Main Street, about nothing at all. His eyes, though, they flicked past me toward the house, toward the office window. I knew he'd take the bait. Sure enough, the next morning when I went into the office, the folder had shifted. The papers inside were just slightly misaligned. My heart pounded, but I forced myself to act normal. 3 days later, the bank called. Daniel had tried to use the fake document to access funds that didn't exist. The investigators confirmed it. He walked right into the trap. But the show wasn't over. Linda suggested we let him feel safe a little longer. Let him believe he was still invisible. That way, when the hammer dropped, it wouldn't just be legal, it would be theatrical. So I kept up the act. I invited Daniel to a neighborhood barbecue, told him I'd supply the grill if he brought the burgers. He showed up in a polo shirt, smiling, joking with kids, flipping patties like the world's most reliable neighbor. People laughed, clapped him on the back, thanked him for always being there to lend a hand. And I stood there, smiling too, knowing the truth. The air was thick with smoke and chatter when Linda gave me the signal from across the street. A pair of unmarked cars pulled up quietly. Officers stepped out, blending into the crowd until the moment came. Daniel was mid-sentence, bragging about how some people just aren't cut out for responsibility when the sirens wailed. Red and blue lights cut through the summer haze. Conversations stopped mid-laugh. Heads turned. 2 officers approached Daniel calmly but firmly. "Daniel Mason? We have a warrant." The spatula slipped from his hand, clattering onto the grill. "What? This is a mistake." He sputtered. "I didn't do anything." Neighbors gasped. Mrs. Langley's hand flew to her mouth. The Johnsons exchanged horrified looks. Kids stared wide-eyed as their favorite neighbor was cuffed right there in the middle of the barbecue. I'll never forget the look on his face when he turned toward me, desperate, searching for backup. But I didn't move. I just met his eyes and said, "You stole my name, Daniel. Now everyone knows yours." Backhand index pointing right. Let me ask you. If you were me, would you have let the police quietly take him away, or would you have made sure the whole neighborhood saw the mask ripped off? Tell me in the comments. Fire, and don't forget, subscribe to Sweetest Revenge for more stories where predators hide in plain sight, until patience makes them pay. The officers led Daniel to the car as neighbors whispered, pointing, shaking their heads. The man who had been the perfect neighbor was now just a criminal in handcuffs. And the sweetest part? This was only the beginning of his fall. When the police car pulled away with Daniel in the back seat, the neighborhood felt frozen. The only sounds were the sizzle of the grill and the distant hum of the siren fading into the summer evening. Then came the whispers. I heard Mrs. Langley murmur. I knew something was off about him. The Johnsons shook their heads, muttering about all the times Daniel had helped them with bills or offered to collect their mail. Parents pulled their kids closer, suddenly remembering the friendly man who always wanted to give piggyback rides or teach them how to ride their bikes. The perfect neighbor mask had cracked, and now everyone was seeing what I had seen. Not a friend, not a helper, but a predator. I stood by the grill, spatula still on the ground where Daniel had dropped it, and let the silence speak. I didn't need to explain. The police had done that for me. The next week was a storm of fallout. Investigators raided Daniel's house. They hauled out boxes of stolen mail, counterfeit IDs, laptops full of spreadsheets with names, addresses, and social security numbers. It wasn't just me. Dozens of neighbors had been victims. Some hadn't even realized yet. Credit ruined, loans opened, bills they never racked up. The shock in their eyes when they saw the evidence. It mirrored my own from months earlier. And for the first time, I felt something I hadn't in a long while: vindication. Because you see, when you try to warn people about betrayal, they don't always believe you. They call you paranoid. They tell you you're overthinking. But proof? Proof is louder than denial. And now the proof was stacked in cardboard boxes carried out of Daniel's home in front of everyone. At the next HOA meeting, people kept thanking me for being patient, for not blowing up too soon, for letting the truth build until it was undeniable. I told them the truth. I didn't do it for thanks. I did it because no one should be able to steal your name, your trust, and your life and walk away smiling. Daniel's trial made the local news. Reporters camped on the corner, microphones in hand, filming as officers escorted him into the courthouse. They called him the perfect neighbor fraudster. His mugshot plastered across the evening news was a far cry from the charming man who'd once flipped burgers at block parties. When he saw me in the courtroom, he looked smaller somehow. Deflated. The easy smile was gone, replaced with a twitch in his jaw and eyes that wouldn't meet mine. His lawyer tried to paint him as misunderstood, a man who'd fallen on hard times and just needed a little extra help. But the evidence was a tidal wave. Stolen mail, fake accounts, fraudulent loans, dozens of neighbors testifying, each one another nail in his coffin. And Linda's photos of the storage unit, the binder of identities, sealed it. The jury didn't take long. Guilty. Daniel was sentenced to years in prison. And when the judge read the sentence, I didn't cheer. I didn't even smile. I just exhaled, the weight finally leaving my chest. Afterward, some neighbors asked if I felt bad for him. He was always so nice, they said. He helped me fix my porch, another whispered. But I didn't feel bad, because nice isn't the same as good. And I'd learned the hard way that sometimes the friendliest smile hides the sharpest knife. That night, I sat in my living room with the window open, listening to the quiet. No sound of Daniel's lawnmower humming next door. No easy banter drifting across the fence. Just peace. And peace, after betrayal, feels like victory. Backhand index pointing right. What about you? If your perfect neighbor turned out to be a fraud stealing not just from you but from everyone around you, would you forgive them after they serve their time? Or would you let their shame be their punishment forever? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Fire, and don't forget, subscribe to Sweetest Revenge for more stories where betrayal hides in plain sight, until patience makes the mask shatter. For months, I'd looked across the street and seen a predator. Now, I saw only an empty porch, and I realized something important. Daniel hadn't stolen my identity. He'd stolen his own. And when the mask finally came off, there was nothing left beneath it but the truth. That truth was my freedom. And that freedom was the sweetest revenge.